Hello everyone. So today we are going to talk about a topic which is going to be allegation and successive percentage. So these are the two different topics basically, and we'll try and understand each one of them in detail. So let's first start with allegation. So let's first try and understand what exactly is allegation, and then we'll see the other scenarios. So allegation is basically a very simpler definition. So for example, let's say you want to mix two or more quantities in a specific ratio and to get the desired proportion. So in what ratio you should mix them? If you want to find that ratio, basically you want to find the mixing ratio, then we are going to use allegation as the concept. Now how do we use that? Let's try and understand using a question. So this is a very simpler question which says in what ratio you should mix two varieties of tea powder, one costing 10 rupees per kilo and the other costing 25 rupees per kilo, so that we get a mixture at an average price of 15 rupees per kilo. Now if you understand what all data is given to you, so you have been given the price of each variety, 10 rupees per kilo and 25 rupees per kilo. They have also given us the average price, which is going to be 15 rupees per kilo. Now if you remember our previous class, which is averages, in averages we did one concept called as weighted average. If you compare this idea with that, what you will end up realizing is that in weighted average we are supposed to find out the average price, whereas in allegation the average price is already given to us and we only want to find out the mixing ratio. Basically कौन सा वैरायटी का कितना किलो मिक्स करना चाहिए ताकि we get that desired average price. Now how do we do this? So the method is very simple. What you do is whichever prices that you are supposed to mix, for example in this case it is going to be 10 rupees per kilo and 25 rupees per kilo, you write them both at the corners, the two ends of the page or two ends of the slide, basically something like this. So for example 10 rupees per kilo on one corner, 25 rupees per kilo on the other corner. Now what you do in the middle, that you write down the average price, which is going to be 15 rupees per kilo. Now after this the most important part comes, which you have to be very careful about, which is you have to take the positive difference but in the cross format. Now whenever we are doing positive difference, what you need to understand is that it is always going to be a bigger value minus the smaller value. So for example we'll do 25 minus 15 and that is going to be 10 rupees basically, and then you are going to do on the left side, you are going to do 15 minus 10, which is going to be 5 rupees basically. And if you can see, the structure that is getting formed is kind of an X shaped, which is a cross kind of a thing, and hence we say the same words, that it is supposed to be positive difference in the cross format. And so basically these are the values, and because it is the ratio, so ratios are always supposed to be reduced in the lowest possible format. So basically 10 and 5, if you obviously reduce by 5 both these numbers, you are going to get the answer as 2:1. So this is your final answer, which means that 10 rupees per kilo wala jo bhi value hai, you are supposed to take 2 kilos of that, and 25 rupees kilo wala jo bhi number hai, you are supposed to take 1 kilo of that. And when you mix both these numbers in this particular proportion, what you end up getting is the average price, which is going to be 15 rupees per kilo. Now if you remember, I said that this is exactly opposite of weighted average, so we can also verify this answer using weighted average. Now how do we do that? Let's also try and understand that. So for example 2 kilos of 10 rupees and 1 kilo of 25 rupees, and if you mix them, you are going to have 3 kilos of mixture. So if you do the calculation, 20 plus 25, that is going to be 45, and 45 divided by 3, obviously you get 15 rupees as your average price, which is also they were saying. So yes, whatever we have done is correct. You don't always have to explicitly verify this final answer, because if you do the process correctly, you are going to get it right. But what I am trying to tell you is, for the surety purpose, that you can also verify. So this is just for your reference basically. So this is what allegation is all about. We'll all obviously see the different varieties that are associated with that when we solve few questions related to this. So assuming you have gotten this correctly, let's moving on to the next idea, that is going to be successive percentage. Now whenever we talk about successive percentage, let's again take an example and then we'll go to the concept. So the question is, A scores 10% more than B and B scores 20% more than C. By what percentage did A score more than C? Now here what we can do is that because the numbers are simpler, we can simply use method of base 100 which we have learned in the first class of percentages. So using that, what we can do is we can start with the value of C basically, because the comparison of A and B is given and then B and C is given. So we can start with C first. So let's assume that C is 100, and because they were saying in this particular line that B is doing 20% more than C, so whatever C has done, B is going to do 20% extra than that. So 100 ka 20% is going to be 20 only. More means it is going to be added basically. Less would have been, you have to subtract. So 100 plus 20 becomes obviously 120. Now if you see the further, if you see the first half which says A is doing 10% more than B. So this means whatever B is doing, A is doing 10% extra than that. So let's say 120 ka 10% first if you calculate, obviously that is going to be 12 basically. So whatever B is doing, A is doing 12 more than that. So B is doing 120, so A is going to do 12 more, that is going to be 132 basically for the value of A. And now when you simply compare with A and C, because that is what they are asking, that compared to C how much more A has done. So you'll see that C has done only 100, A has done 132. So compared to C, A has done 32 more, and 32 out of 100 is obviously 32%. So this is your answer using the basic idea, because we can do this with a method of base 100 method. But coming back to the main idea, that is successive percentage. Now how do we do this with successive percentage? So using successive percentage, first you need to understand that when do we use successive percentage. So very simple thought process. In any of the questions, if you have 2 or more than 2 percentage numbers, then you can simply think of successive percentage, and that's the simplest framework that you should also always remember. So you just need 2 percentage numbers or more than 2 percentage number, and you can use successive percentage. So here obviously our question satisfies that. But now what we will need to understand is first of all the formula to calculate the answer. So there is a formula to calculate the answer, and that goes by the name, which is going to be net change. And this net change is given by a formula A plus B plus AB upon 100. So this is the formula for successive percentage that you will have to remember. The best part is whatever these 2 percentage numbers that I am talking about, these are your A and B. You simply have to substitute them in the formula. Only one thumb rule you will have to follow. Any percentage increase, while substituting, you will have to substitute them as positive numbers, and any percentage decrease you have to substitute them as negative numbers. Now this is very important. So basically this formula is under the assumption that both these A and B are percentage increases, and hence we have taken them to be positive basically. So that is one aspect behind that. Now coming back to our question, if you remember, what were they saying? So they were saying that A is doing 10% more than B, and B is also doing 20% more than C. So very clearly this word more tells us that both these are going to be percentage increases. So obviously they are supposed to be positive numbers. So if we just substitute in the formula, same formula, so what do we have? So let's take A as 10 for example, and B as 20. So this becomes this. So obviously this 2 zeros will get cancelled off, and then you have 10 plus 20, which is 30, and 30 plus 2 becomes 32%. And if you compare that with the previous method, you see that you are getting the same answer, ditto same answer, 32%. If you compare that with the previous method, as you can see here. So this is what you need to remember: successive percentage and the formula associated with successive percentage as the concept. The formula is so nice that even the final answer will automatically tell you a lot of things. So for example, if the final answer is positive, you clearly understand it's a percentage increase, and if the final answer is negative, you clearly understand it's a percentage decrease. You don't have to do anything else when it comes to all these numbers. So this is the application of successive percentage. So 32% using the same idea of successive percentage. Now moving on to the next idea. So this particular question, let's try this out, which says the price of vegetable increases by 10%, very important, and the monthly consumption of vegetable is also increases by 30%. Find the percentage increase in the monthly expenses of the vegetables. Now again, very clearly you can see that there are two percentage numbers. So what we can do is we can use the idea of successive percentage, and again both these numbers, they both are increases. So because they both are increases, obviously we are going to take them to be positive while calculation. So one of our values is 10 and the other value is 30. Price is increasing by 10%, consumption is increasing by 30%. So let's use the formula, which is going to be a plus b plus ab upon 100. Again, when you solve this, so this 2 zeros again goes off and you get final answer to be 43% basically as the final answer. So 30 plus 10 becomes 40 and 40 plus 3 becomes 43. So the net change, yani the overall expenses of the month goes up by 43%. So that is successive percentage. As I said, very simpler idea. One more time the formula: a plus b plus ab upon 100. A and b are your percentages. Only one thumb rule: for all the percentage increases, you are going to take it as positive. For all the percentage decreases, you are going to take it as negative. So these are the concepts for allegation and successive percentage. Obviously we'll come back and try and solve questions based on all these both categories, and understand more things in terms of different varieties and different things that you can tackle, or the extra things that you need to know, so that you can be very good at this idea. So that's it about the concept. Okay, so let's talk about the questions now. So the first question says that the three varieties of sugar costing 10 rupees per kilo and 13 rupees per kilo and 18 rupees per kilo are mixed in such a manner that the average price of the mixture supposed to be 15 rupees per kilo. Then in what ratio these three varieties are supposed to be mixed basically. So there are a lot of answers options there. Now how do we solve this? So obviously the three varieties that we are supposed to mix, their prices have been given to us and the average price is also given to us, and we have to find out the mixing ratio as they are saying. So obviously we are supposed to use the allegation part, but right now we have more than two varieties. Now how do we solve them? So let's use weighted average. So what we can do is the prices that they have given us, that are 10 rupees, 13 rupees and 18 rupees, and the average price has to be 15 rupees. Now what I'll do is I'll just randomly pick one of the answers and see what happens. So let's say if I assume this to be the answer, that is 2:1:4. So I'm saying that 10 rupees per kilo वाला 2 किलो मिक्स करना चाहिए, 13 वाला 1 किलो करना चाहिए एंड 18 वाला 4 किलो मिक्स करना चाहिए. When I do that, I also get the total mixture as 2 plus 1 plus 4, that is going to be 7 kilos to be precise. Let's do the calculation. So this is going to be 20, this is going to be 13, and this is going to be 72, and 72 divided by 7. So this is going to be 105 divided by 7. You get the answer as 15 rupees. So this seems like the correct answer, which is 2:1:4. Now let's try with the other option, which is, let's say, 1:2:4. So same calculation, 1 kilo for 10 rupees, 2 kilo for 13 rupees and 3 kilos for 18 rupees. If I mix them in this ratio, I will have 6 kilos of mixture. So 10 plus 26 plus 54 divided by 6, which is again going to be 90 upon 6, which is again going to be 15 rupees as the average, which is again this answer is matching. So basically this option is also there. So clearly from all of this you should understand the correct answer is actually cannot be determined, because there are multiple answers that are possible. So going forward, this becomes a thumb rule for you. When they say that there is supposed to be allegation for more than two varieties, the answer is always going to be cannot be determined, because what you do is you get multiple answers, and that is how this whole idea works out to be basically. So this is what you need to remember when we have more than two varieties, and this is the solution in which we can get this idea. So remember always, if you do not have cannot be determined as the answer, then obviously you will have to take one of the answer options and then do weighted average, and then figure out what is the correct answer basically. So correct answer is cannot be determined because of multiple answer, not because you can't find out, but because you get multiple answers basically. So that's your first question. Talking about second one, which says a vessel contains milk and water in the ratio 9:11, and there is another vessel which also contains milk and water in the ratio 1:3. Then what is the in what ratio the contents of these two vessels should be mixed or should be added so that we get a milk and water in the ratio 2:3. Again we are supposed to find out the mixing ratio. That means again we are supposed to use allegation, but then how it is different than the other variety. So here we are dealing with ratios. Whenever we are talking about allegation, we are dealing with ratios. So how do we do that? So what you will have to do is, first you will have to define a component for which you will have to do the allegation. So for example, either you can do it for milk or you can do it for water. In both the scenarios you get the same answer. So let's do it, let's say for milk. So whenever you decide the component, the next part that you will have to do is you will have to select the fraction. Now whenever we talk about fraction, what exactly it means, that is that out of the total mixture, how much is that particular component available. So for example, we know that in the first vessel the ratio of milk and water is basically 9:11, which means that there is 9 parts of milk and 11 parts of water. So that means the ratio is 9:11. That means the total mixture is 20 parts, and out of which 9 part is milk basically. So the fraction for milk becomes 9/20. Similarly, in the second vessel the ratio was 1:3. So the fraction of milk becomes 1/4, and after mixing you get 2:3 as the ratio. So the fraction of milk becomes 2/5 basically. Now what we will have to do is obviously do the allegation, that is take positive difference in the cross format. But before we do that, we'll have to do one more simplification, that is in terms of making the denominators equal, because the denominators are not same. So we'll have to take LCM. So 4, 5, 20 ka LCM becomes 20 only. So we'll have to change all the denominators to 20 basically. The first one is already 20 denominators, we don't have to do any changes there. But the second one and the middle one will have to do that. So the second one, if we talk about first, that is going to be 1/4. So to make it 20, we'll have to multiply by 5 in both numerator and denominator. So that becomes 5/20. And then the middle one, to make it 20, we'll have to multiply by 4. So again, if we multiply by 4 in both numerator and denominator, it becomes 8/20 basically. And now since the denominators are same, now we can simply subtract them. So let's subtract them. So that gives us the answer as 3/20 is to 1/20. But then again, because it's a ratio, so we can also get rid of denominator wala 20 also. So the final answer becomes 3:1 basically. Now as I said, this is for milk. Let's try and do it and see what happens exactly for water. So same thing, what we'll have to do is, we'll have to take fraction of water. So in the first vessel, out of 20 parts, water is only 11 parts, because milk and water ka ratio was 9:11 if you remember. So the fraction becomes 11/20. In the second vessel, the ratio is 1:3. So the fraction of water becomes 3/4, and after mixing it becomes 3/5. Same story all over again. Before subtracting them, we'll have to make all the denominators equal. So we'll have to take their LCM. So when we take their LCM, again it becomes 20. So if we multiply again by 4 and 5 in the respective places, these are the numbers that we have. So again, the right one becomes 15/20 and the middle one becomes 12/20. If you take the difference, it becomes 3/20 again. And then on the right hand side, 12/20 and 11/20, if you subtract them, they become 1/20. So again you are getting the same ratio, which is 3:1. So here what you need to remember is, if you are dealing with ratios and you are supposed to do alligation, so do not worry too much about it. Just simply pick one component and do it, because for the other component the answer is going to remain the same. So you don't have to bother about which component to do it for. Just pick one component and get it done. If you do the calculation right, obviously you are gonna get the answer also right in a similar manner. So that's your second question. Now let's talk about the third one, which says there is a person who covers 800 kilometers in 10 hours, partly at 65 km per hour and partly at 115 km per hour, and we have to find the distance that he covers at a speed of 65 km per hour. Now again here what we'll have to do is, we'll have to do alligation for speeds basically, but to do the alligation we do not have the average speed, which is the middle part that we write it at the below when you do the alligation. Now how do we get that? So one simple formula you can remember for average speed, and going forward that is going to be the same formula also, which is going to be total distance upon total time. That's the simplest of all formulas. So when you know 800 kilometers in 10 hours, so total distance is 800, total time is 10 hours, so 800 divided by 10 becomes 80 kilometers per hour as your speed basically, as your average speed basically. So let's do the alligation, both the speeds at the corners. So 65 at one corner, 115 in the other corner. When we calculate that, we'll again have to do what? Positive difference in the cross format. So 115 minus 80, you get 35 on the left side, and 80 minus 65, you get 15 on the right side. Because this is ratio, we'll have to reduce them to the lowest possible form. So 35:15, obviously if you divide by 5 throughout, you're gonna get 7:3 as the answer. Now comes the most important part. So majority of the people think that because we have done alligation for speed, so this ratio that we get is going to be basically for distance, because speed and distance are directly proportional, because if you increase speed, the distance also increases, and vice versa. And if you work from that thought process, the answer is going to be incorrect. So what you need to remember here is, as a very very important funda, as a new concept probably also, that whenever we do alligation for speed, the final ratio that we normally get is not going to be for your distance, but it is always going to be for time. So the point is, this is not the ratio of the distances, but it is the ratio of the time. So now what we will have to do is, we'll have to divide the 10 hours, the total time 10 hours, in the ratio 7:3. And when we do that, what we realize is that we get the answer to be 7 hours and 3 hours respectively. So now the question that they were asking is, how much is the distance covered at a speed of 65 km per hour? Now if you remember speed ka formula, that is distance upon time, and if you want to calculate the distance, the formula for distance becomes speed into time basically. So we know the speed, that is 65 km per hour, and we know for how long we are also traveling at that speed, which is 7 hours apparently. And if you do the calculation, you get the answer as I think 455 kilometers, and that is your correct answer, which you need to remember. So the correct answer is not 540, it is going to be 445 basically, which is what you need to remember when you are working with such kind of questions. So one important point that you need to remember here is that if you do allegation for speed, the ratio that you get is always going to be the ratio of the time basically, which is what you need to remember. So that's about the third question. Moving on to the fourth one, which says, in an entrance exam, 4 marks are awarded for every right answer and 1 mark is deducted for every wrong answer. A student attempts 48 questions and scores 132 marks. How many questions did he attempt correctly and how many incorrectly? So there are multiple ways to do that question. One way that I normally think about is equations, which most of the people probably are not comfortable. Those who are comfortable obviously can understand. So let's do that. So let's say he is attempting 48 questions. Now obviously all of them are not going to be correct. So let's make one equation for a number of questions. So all the 48 questions, some of them can be right, some of them can be wrong. So let's assume the correct number of questions is C and the wrong questions are W, and both of them together are 48 questions. So that is one equation using the number of questions. The other equation that we can form using the marking scheme. So for example, 4 marks are awarded for every right answer is what they are saying. So C number of correct questions, so total marks will be 4C, and 1 mark is deducted for every wrong answer. So obviously -1 for every wrong answer, that is -W marks. And after all of this, he is scoring 132 marks. So this is your equation number 2. Now all we can simply do is add both these equations. So plus W minus W gets cancelled and you get 4C plus C, this 5C, and this is 180, and obviously C becomes 36. 180 divided by 5. So total number of correct questions is 36, and this is how you solve that basically. So this is your first method using the equations approach basically, and that is what you need to remember whenever we are talking about such kind of questions basically. So moving on, I mean this is just one of the approaches. The other approach could have been, what you could have done is you could have simply substituted some numbers from the options, because one of the options has to be right. So without worrying too much about it, you can also do that. So this is another method. So basically 2 methods we have seen. Let's look at the third one. So third one is slightly out of box thought process, which we will call it as all-in-one approach. Now what is this all-in-one approach? Let's try and understand that in more details. So what we can do is we can create couple of hypothetical scenarios. So for example, this guy is attempting 48 questions. Now assuming the best possible case, what really happens is that he can get all of them right. So if he gets all 48 right, then how many marks he's getting? So 4 marks right for every one answer, if you remember that. So 48 Forza, he's going to get 192 marks. That's like the best scenario. Similarly, what can be the worst scenario? So worst scenario will be he's getting all wrong. So all 48 wrong, so he's going to get minus 48 marks basically for that. And then comes the reality, which is his actual score, which is going to be 132 that he has scored. And now what we can do is we can do allegation. So when we do allegation here, what really happens is we'll have to do positive difference in the cross format. So positive difference in the cross format, bigger value minus smaller value. Here also a lot of students make a smaller mistake. So here they do 132 minus 48, but you have to understand the smaller number itself is negative. So when you subtract that, it is going to be positive because minus minus becomes plus. So it is going to be 132 minus of minus 48, which is going to be plus 48. So don't subtract, and these are the things you have to pay attention to, very small details. So 132 plus 48 becomes 180 on the left side, and on the right side 192 minus 132 becomes 60 basically. So once we have this, again this means it's a ratio of number of questions, and because it's a ratio, we can reduce it to the lowest possible form. So 80 and 60 if you reduce gives you 3:1 is the answer. So 3:1 is the ratio of total number of questions, and he has attempted, if you remember, 48 questions. So now all we have to do is divide 48 in the ratio of 3:1. When you do that, you get the answer as 36 and 12 questions. So 36 correct and 12 questions incorrect, because 48 into 3 by 4 is 36 and 48 into 1 by 4 is 12. So that is how you divide the numbers in certain ratios also. So coming back to the answer, how many questions he got it correctly? So 36 questions he got correct. So answer option 5, and 12 questions he got incorrect out of 48 questions that he has attempted, according to the data that was given to us. So that is your fourth question. This is the allegation. Now let's talk about the other question, that is question number 5, which is related to successive percentage. So clearly you can see that it's a different type, that you have more than 2 numbers. No need to worry. What you can do is, at one point formula can only consider 2 numbers, because the formula has a plus b, a minus b, something like that kind of a structure. So you start with any 2 numbers. There is absolutely no restriction. Just follow the sign conventions properly. So let's say if we start with the first 2 numbers, so one of them is increase and the other one is decrease. So according to the concept, we'll have to substitute that as positive and the other one as negative. So the formula slightly changes. It becomes a minus b minus ab upon 100 basically. So it becomes 20 minus 10, which is going to be 10 only, and then 20 into 10 is minus 200 divided by 100 becomes minus 2. So 10 minus 2 becomes 8 basically. So 8% increase is the net change of the first 2 numbers. But there was another number also. So what we will have to now do is do one more time successive with that third number with the result of the first 2 numbers. So now we are going to perform successive percentage one more time with 8% increase and 25% increase. So let's do that one more time. If we apply the formula, now since both of them are increased, so it is going to be the same original formula, that is going to be a plus b plus ab upon 100. So 25 plus 8, which is 33, and 25 is 200, 200 upon 100 again becomes 2 only. So 33 plus 2, which gives you 35% as the net change. So, and it is positive, so it becomes increase. So the logic of this thing then basically means that you can do this for infinite number of values, because let's say there would have been a 4th number. What we would have done is we would have done 35% increase and that 4th number one more time. We would have used the formula of successive percentage. So you can keep doing this whenever you want to do this. So there is no restriction on how many numbers you can do this. It's just that you need to do it correctly and keeping in mind all the other situations in terms of solving practice. So this was the 5th question. Let's have a look at the 6th one. The 6th one says there are 2 investment options, both with a lock-in period, and the first option you get 10% return in 1 year, 20% in 2nd year, and 30% in the 3rd year. Whereas in the second option you get 30% in the 1st year, 20% in the 2nd year, and 10% in 3rd year, again compounded, which is the answer that gives you the higher returns at the end of 3 years. So now clearly both the options, they have 3 values each in percentages. Automatically we need to do successive percentage when it comes to such ideas. So let's apply for the first option, which has 10%, 20%, 30%, and because these are returns, so unless and until they are mentioned to be negative returns, you are not supposed to take them negative, you are supposed to only consider them positive only. So all the numbers are positive. So let's do for first option. The first two numbers are 10 and 20. If you apply the formula of successive percentage, which is A plus B plus AB upon 100. So that gives you, the whole calculation gives you 30 plus 2, that is 32% as the net change. But then there is third value also, so we'll have to do that one more time with 30% and 32%. So again, let's apply the formula. So 32 plus 30 plus 32 into 30. So that becomes 62, and 32 3s is 96. Yeah, so 9.6 will be that. So 62 plus 9.6 is going to be 71.6% as your final overall answer. This was option 1. Now let's talk about option 2. Option 2 is 30% and 20%, the first two numbers. Let's again substitute in the formula of successive percentage, A plus B plus AB upon 100. So 30 plus 20 becomes 50, and 32s are 60, that is 6%, basically 0 0 if we cancel out. So 56 is your answer. And then 56 and 10% we'll have to do again successive. So 56 plus 10 plus 56 into 10 upon 100. So that is going to be 66 plus 5.6. So 66 plus 5.6, again you get the same answer, which is going to be 71.6%. So the point is, and this is what you need to remember going forward, folks, that if your numbers are same, but the only change is that if we change the order in which they appear, the final answer doesn't change, it remains the same. So you don't have to actually apply the formula these many times going forward. If you have similar kind of a situation, all you have to do is simply say both the options are going to give you the same returns. So answer option 3 becomes your answer, and this extra pointer that you need to remember, that in successive percentage, the order in which the change happens is actually not very important. If the numbers are same, the order can be different, final answer remains same. So don't waste your time solving such things in future. These are your 5-10 second shortcuts, provided you are able to identify them from the question. So this was our 6th question. Let's talk about the penultimate one, that is the 7th one, which says the length of the rectangle is increased by 30% and the breadth is decreased by 30%. Then what is the percentage change in the area of the rectangle? So clearly 2 percentages are there. We can automatically think of successive percentage. So one is 30% increase, the other one is 30% decrease. Increase is supposed to be done positive, decrease is supposed to be substituted as negative. So let's do that one more time. So 30 minus 30, the product also becomes negative because one number is plus and the other one is minus. So 30 plus 30 minus 30 cancels them out each other. The other one remains minus 900 upon 100, which is going to be minus 9, and minus 9 tells you that it's going to be a 9% decrease in the overall area of the rectangle, if this is going to be the change basically. So answer option 3 is your answer. Very simple, straightforward questions. All you have to do is identify that 2 percentage values are there. We can think of successive percentage going forward every single time. That is what the whole idea is. Okay, let's talk about the last one, which says Nihar's salary increases by 100%, whereas the tax increases by 175%. And what is the percentage increase in the tax rate? Now, one clear mistake that happens is, if you do successive, for example 100 and 175, which most of the people do because this is what we have been doing so far. So that is 275 plus 175, that is I think going to be 450%, and that is nowhere there in the answer option. So clearly you understand that there is something wrong, or there is something that we have missed altogether entirely in this whole idea. and that is what we need to remember. So folks, the question purposely we have kept it like this, the tricky one. So what happens is, so far what was happening, that we were actually not bothering that what is happening in the background. We were just only concerned with the fact that there are two percentage numbers and we can use the successive formula, we get the answer, we were happy because it was also working, with the options. Right now we are at a situation when we apply the same thing, unfortunately the answer that we have is entirely different than what is there in the options. So you should now actually start thinking in the background that what all we missed. So the idea here is, whenever you are applying successive percentage in the word problems, the idea is that you have to identify which component actually belongs to which situation. For example, if you remember the formula of successive percentage that we have done in the concept, it says net change is equal to A plus B plus AB upon 100. Now the thing is, we have to identify what is net change, what is A, what is B, and so on and so forth, which we are not doing in any of the word problems so far. So if we talk about this question number 8, let's first try and understand what are the components they have given. So they have given us salary, they have given us tax rate, and they have given us tax. So these are the three components that we have. Now the idea here is that when we do 100 and 175 ka successive, we are assuming that the tax rate is our net change, but unfortunately it is not the right conclusion, because the answer is 450, which is not there in the options. So clearly that is not right. So the idea is that net change is not tax rate actually, but it is tax. So very, very important, and it is normally based on common sense these questions are. So if you see how, or rather why tax has to be the final outcome, because how tax is calculated. So tax is calculated depending on two things. One is what is your salary, and the second one is according to that salary which tax bracket you belong to, whether you pay 30% or 20% or 10%, right? So that is your tax rate. So salary has to be one of your A or B rather, and then tax rate has to be the other one, and whereas the tax has to be the final outcome basically. So we have to just tweak the formula. Instead of taking tax rate as the net change, we have to do tax as the net change. So let's apply the formula now. So if we assume that the tax rate increases by R%, for example, and salary is increasing by 100%, and tax is also increasing by 175%. So if you apply the formula, so this is what it looks like. So now we just need to solve it. So obviously here 100 and 100 will cancel out. This R plus R becomes 2R, and 2R plus 100 is equal to 175 on that side. So this 100 goes there and gets subtracted. So 2R becomes 175 minus 100, which is going to be 75. So R is going to be 75 divided by 2, which I think is 37.5%. Yes, 37.5%. So that is your correct answer for question number 8. So what you need to remember going forward in the questions of successive percentage, that is that whenever you are come across word problems, just make sure that you identify each of them correctly, that what is the net change, what is A, what is B. Otherwise you can fall into such kind of traps that we were earlier dealing in this type of question. So this is about your successive percentage and allegation as the topic. If you have any queries, feel free to get in touch with us, and we are done for today in terms of this idea. Thank you so much. Revise everything, solve everything one more time, and do let us know if we can help in any other way going forward. Thank you so much.